Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
Actually, one of my favorite times of the week. He's really good at communicating. We get along well. Can't say that about all my partners that I do podcasts with. But welcome to Nebraska Preps Postgame with my guy, just fresh off his birthday yesterday. My man, Jacob Padilla, man. Happy belated birthday. Happy birthday yesterday on social media when I told you. How are things?
Well, a lot better yesterday than when I woke up this morning.
Fair. Good point. Yesterday was a birthday. Today you wake up to not so good of a gift.
Yeah. Chris Paul apparently in COVID protocols in the NBA after testing positive, despite reports that he has been vaccinated. So,
yeah, so
not great.
I have so there's some pros and cons to that, right? The pros are I don't have to talk about another athlete or somebody with a lot to lose or choosing not to be vaccinated, right? And I'm sure, listen, the Rizzos of the world, I'm for you, right? It's cool. It's your choice. But if I'm John Rahm or somebody and I know that not being vaccinated cost me $1.7 million, I'm just trying to figure out what the number would be to give me a peace of mind to not be vaccinated, right? Yeah. It's like, and I'm not trying to tell people what to do, knock yourself out, but coincidentally, John Rahm is now vaccinated.
I'm getting my second shot tomorrow. So,
and so the downside of that, though, is if he was, in fact, vaccinated in February, like some of the reports are, he's positive again already?
Well, and so the thing, like the vaccine doesn't protect you 100%.
True.
It protects you a lot.
They did say you'd probably need boosters.
And once you get it, it helps. It keeps the symptoms down. It makes it much easier on you if you do get it. So I think Damian Lee I saw also tested positive from the Warriors after being vaccinated. So, I mean, it's going to happen. Unfortunately, I don't know how it happens to Chris Paul. It's just his luck is insane.
It's almost you can't like make that stuff up.
Yeah,
a knee, a hammy, a back, a hand. It's always something.
And then to have the scare of the shoulder thing in the first round and to get through that, now you think, all right, we got through the Chris Paul postseason injury. And then, bam, you get hit with, it's not an injury, it's something completely different, something incredibly unique to this season and this last season, I guess. And now we don't know. It's, again, up in the air. He is indefinitely, he will be out and away from the team. But again, we don't know exactly what the protocols are, what exactly he needs to clear to be able to get back in it. And we also don't know when the Western Conference Finals are going to start. We at least going 6 here in the other Western Series. And if it goes 7, I'd love to see that. Just give us a little bit more time.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's
interesting,
good things
right?
can't happen.
In the NBA, I would have, if you would have asked me to rank level of importance, this is pre the playoffs starting. Actually, second round. Okay? I would have ranked, so 3 of the 4 people that are in the headlines this morning, I would have put probably 1, 2, 4 in terms of the level of importance, value to their team. Kevin Durant, 1. I would have gone Kawhi Leonard 2. I probably would go with James Harden 3 and Chris Paul 4. This was starting the second round, right? So I figured 3 of those guys are in the headlines today, and only 1 of them is in the headlines for playing basketball, and that's KD.
Well, even Harden is kind of involved in there, too, because he played 46 minutes and scored 3 points and could barely run.
Hey, how about his humility, though? Yeah. James Harden, I'm not going to say he's like high on the Q rating, but he's gone from kind of unlikable to, okay, he's been a fantastic teammate. He said all the right things. He's constantly cheering. He gave it what he had yesterday. And then he openly says, hey, I did the best I could do. I gave it the best I had. Wasn't much.
Yeah.
but it was, I think, emotionally, it's enough to give them a shot in the arm.
And that's what he said. My team needed me. I had to go out there and do what I could. And again, he wasn't particularly effective, but just being out there, considering they don't have a lot of other great options, I think that probably did take some of the pressure off Durant being able to play 48 minutes when you've got Harden handling the ball and bringing it up and at least getting them into their sets and all that kind of stuff, whereas you don't have to necessarily rely on Durant to create everything on his own. You can get him into better situations to start with, so it makes it a little bit easier on him.
Yeah, Chris Paul, man. I didn't want to get into like the recency bias, and I'm usually I'm a Chris Paul advocate, right?
Yeah.
You heard he's hard on his teammates. He grades over time. He hasn't got them past the second round. He hasn't, he can't do this. He can't do that. And I'm just like, statistically, he holds up over time.
And I think he's kind of shown with this team. He's not necessarily hard on all of his teammates. If you're in lockstep with him, his team, like the guys in Phoenix, absolutely adore him.
Yeah.
And he's written DeAndre Ayton. He's been all over him. I mean, he's gotten on Devin Booker at times. Like these guys, difference is these guys are ready for that, though, after everything they've been through. They want that kind of challenge. And these guys are all, like I said, in lockstep with what Chris Paul wants, too. And that's a big part of why he came to Phoenix, because this is the situation that he saw playing out. Maybe not necessarily Western Conference Finals, but it's a team on the rise with young guys that wanted to win, and he felt like he could be the guy that could come in there and help them do that.
This NBA 7 Minutes brought to you by Nebraska Preps Postgame, Jacob Padilla. Two more quick things. Number one, you brought up Devin Booker. Last week on our show, and I know sometimes you'll go back and cast if we have got some good enough titles for you. I compared Devin Booker's efficiency of movement, right, to Klay Thompson. It got some pushback real time, right? Because I don't know, I think people, for whatever the reason, they still kind of want to knock Devin Booker, even though he's a much more willing defender than people give him credit for. I'm not sure he's ever going to be a plus defender, but he's willing. And he guards. And
he has been good in the postseason. Yeah. That's kind of the old narratives that people, you just toss out, Devin Booker, massive defensive negative. And I always felt like that was overplayed. He wasn't good, and he still got some bad tendencies at times where he'll ball watch and get back cut or things like that. And he's not necessarily elite in terms of physical tools with his length to be able to challenge and alter shots and that kind of stuff. But he's a lot, but he's not like a Trae Young level bad where it is just an absolute drain on your entire defense. He's a guy that can fit in at 6'6", decent enough athleticism, decent enough understanding of the game. He can fit into what has been the number one defense in the postseason. So, like, now that he's actually had a reason to play hard on that end, and he hasn't had to carry the whole offensive load, he's got Chris Paul with him. He's got some other guys stepping up. Now he can put a little more effort in on defense.
And I went back. This wasn't to validate or vindicate. I just went down the Devin Booker rabbit hole. And how he was recruited, how Cal coached his dad on one of his teams. It wasn't really the All-Star group or the Pan Am deal. It was, I can't remember where he coached Melvin, but it was a kind of collection of talents, right? And meeting him and Melvin Booker's dad, not necessarily caring that they still had the twins playing and coming back at Kentucky. He didn't want to throw Devin into, kind of the fire early, and it was he and Ulis that came off the bench that year. And there's a 2015 clip of a young Devin Booker where people, do you know who they compared him to?
Klay Thompson was a comparison even coming out of the draft.
Klay Thompson.
And even 3 years into his career, people will still make that. I think it's combination of the way he did play at Kentucky, and I think just kind of the way he looks a little bit. There's some similarities between them. But yeah, their games are nothing alike in terms of overall what Devin's strengths are compared to what Klay's are. And
so where I think I was getting pushback was people didn't hear the end of the comparison. I said, I'm not talking about being a knockdown three-point shooter. I'm talking about very little wasted movement.
In
the body mechanics, how he moves, fitting into spots, being a compliment, but still a deadly scorer. He's very efficient with his movements.
And that's kind of what they've been allowed to do with Chris Paul on the team now, where you can run him off the ball more and put him through sets where he catches the ball in advantageous spots where he doesn't have to create as much as he did off the dribble previously. Last year he was playing kind of more shading towards the Harden type of dominating the ball, trying to make every play. And he did fairly well in that role for the talent around him. But now you get a kind of mix in a little bit of that where it's Devin, excuse me, go get a bucket, but you can also get him a bucket and get him into his spots where he doesn't have to dribble 10 times to get open and make a play. You can just come off a pin down, knock down the mid-range, get a little pump fake, one dribble, pull up. He can get to all his different spots now because he's sharing the court with a guy like Chris Paul.
Continuing with this NBA 10 minutes brought to you by Nebraska Preps Postgame and Jacob Padilla.
It's June. What are we going to talk about?
A very spirited conversation where I said I would take Steve. They're starting to rank Chris Paul. I had him at 6th. I had him as the 6th best NBA point guard. And I didn't count Steph Curry as a point guard. I went with Magic, Oscar, Stockton, not in this order, although Magic is 1. Magic, Oscar, Stockton, Isaiah Thomas, and Steve Nash. I put Paul 6th. And you hit me with the subtle. Yesterday it was just, hey, you know what, I'd probably take Chris Paul. Today it was most smart basketball people would take Paul ahead of Nash, but you have a caveat. The caveat is what?
I just think that the totality of what Chris has been able to do throughout his
over
career.
Time.
And again, Steve Nash is my favorite player of all time. He's the reason I love basketball as much as I do, why I'm a Suns fan. And he 2-time MVP. You can't really say much against that. But Chris Paul was better early. He's just as good late into his career. Obviously, you've got the defensive side of it as well, in addition to being as good as he is on offense. And he's not as flashy as Nash is as a passer, not quite as creative, but the assist-to-turnover ratio is immaculate. And that's where the point guard nickname comes from, is he just understands and plays the game at such a high level, that point guard position, where he doesn't make many mistakes. And he's just so efficient everything he does. And Chris, obviously, we saw that closeout game 4, just masterful performance. There was nothing that Denver could do against him. Obviously, I think Steve, he wasn't quite. I don't know that he controlled as many facets of the game as Chris does.
Some of it was style of play, having to play with D'Antoni in that style of offense. But can you imagine today, without really being able to be touched or checked, with a stretch, just putting Steve Nash? Amari Stoudemire couldn't shoot. Now, he could finish, and they could play some two-man games, but just imagine Steve Nash with a guy that could play pick and pop or pick and roll.
Well,
It'd be deadly.
Well, Amari, after the microfracture surgery, he came back with a jumper. He was a knockdown elbow jumper, so he had the pick and pop, not out to 3, but to the elbow, and he still had he wasn't quite the nuclear athlete, but his touch was just insane around the basket. So, that pick and roll, that's, one of the 2-3 best pick and roll combinations, I think you would say, that we've seen in the NBA. Obviously, I didn't get to watch the entirety, Stockton, Malone, and some of the older guys, but just in terms of what they're able to do together. And with Nash, it's interesting. And he's come out and said, he probably should have been a little bit more aggressive at times. And that's something that a lot of Suns fans kind of talked about throughout his career, where as skilled as he is, he could have scored more. And it just wasn't necessarily in his nature. And he's come out and said, probably if I had tried to be a little bit more aggressive, maybe my career would have looked a little bit different, but that just wasn't in his nature. And that's part of what I loved about him, is just how unselfish he was, how he was always focused on getting other guys looks.
2 guys that we've talked about as we transition to the high school level, because I think philosophically I got a couple questions. Because you don't see it often, but I think we have 1, maybe 2. They happen to play for the same team, so hold that thought. We talked about Kawhi Leonard early. He's a mid-range guy, even though he shoots a really good percentage from 3 when it matters, i.e. the postseason. We saw Chris Paul go for 37 points without making a three-pointer. Try that at home. Just doesn't happen in 2021. Could you see the high school game, given what's happening with analytics, where long twos, mid-range game, if you're not Tate Oddbody, if you're not Chandler Meeks, two guys that have tremendous pull-up game, shoot a significant amount of deeper twos, aren't necessarily at the rim, but in that 6 to 12-foot range. I don't know how you feel about Josh Dix. He kind of comes to mind, too, with good mid-range game. Could you see, if you're efficient enough, or being efficient enough, where the mid-range game has a place in high school athletics right now?
Well, definitely, and that's the whole discussion about the analytics as a whole. Is it's telling us not that mid-ranges are bad shots; it's that most guys aren't good enough for them to be a good shot. If you are good enough at that shot, it's an incredibly valuable tool to have, especially depending on with so much drop coverage late in the shot clock, where maybe they've got two guys in the paint. You're not going to be able to get all the way there because that guy in the corner is not a knockdown shooter. That's where it really becomes such a valuable weapon if you're really good at it.
I mean, don't you have to have something other than the three, the layup, or the floater?
It's a great late shot clock weapon or late in the clock weapon. It's not a great early in the shot clock shot. And obviously we don't have shot clock yet in high school, but it's not something where you want to come down, no pass, dribble in and pull up from the elbow regularly. Like, you want to be able to try to generate easier looks before you kind of go to that. But if nothing's happening there and you got an opening and you feel confident in that shot, step in, knock it down. And I don't think coaches will have a problem with that.
So two guys, one has graduated and has moved on to Gonzaga. Hunter Salas had a great pull-up game.
Yeah.
You know another guy that I like that has a really fantastic pull-up game, but sometimes gets a little bit knocked for his shot selection, is Josiah Dodsler. He's got a fantastic pull-up game. His mid-range game, because he's not to the point now where you think like, ooh, knockdown three-point shooter, but he could be a prolific scorer if he wanted to be, if it fits within that offense. But his mid-range game, and I know it's funny you say that early shot clock versus late. Sometimes when you have pull-up game, people question whether it's a good shot or not. Isn't that kind of we have to reconcile it in our head, right?
Yeah, and a lot of it is the kind. And like I'm saying, if no possession, you dribble down and just pull one up and take it. If there's a hand in your face, those aren't good shots. If defense is playing way off, and again, if you're good at that shot, step right in the shot, knock it down, make them pay for the way they're defending you. That's when it's a good shot. And yeah, Josiah, I think kind of that's part of the development of playing off the ball with Chucky, where you swing the pass, pump fake, they close out, one dribble, pull up there with the guy, the help defenders kind of in the paint. So that's where it does become a really nice weapon to have. And then if you've got that threat, then that opens up the drive all the way to the basket even more. And Josiah, I watched at the UNO team camp this weekend on Saturday, and he went head-to-head with Taman Lipsey, the Iowa State commit at Ames. And Josiah straight up outplayed him head-to-head. And I think he had 22 points in that game, really efficient. Taman came down and hit a three to tie it with 12 seconds or whatever. Got the ball to Josiah, pick and roll, snake that thing, went down, went up in the air, took the contact, extended, and finished for the and one, and went up and made the free throw too, and then they got to stop. So, and then he was pretty darn good in the second game I saw.
It's funny too, right? Because critics always say, don't let him get to the left hand. Don't let him get to the head. But
game winner with the right.
Him's finishing, I don't know if it was the broken wrist. Him finishing around the rim, he's pretty ambidextrous. Now maybe off the power dribble, okay.
Yeah.
Right? Those little tight ball screens, you let him get in the lane left-handed, it's probably a wrap. But he's pretty good with finishing with both hands.
He really has, because that was a knock I used to have on him, where he was strong, dominant left hand when he was younger, and now you wouldn't even be able to tell watching him unless he's taking a jump shot. He finishes either way, going right hand and equally comfortable. You don't see him in the fast break crossing over to try to get to his left hand necessarily. He's fine, just continuing with the right. And that's such a huge asset for players when you can do that, when you can be, especially when you're as good a fisher as he is, when you can go with both hands. And that's a thing with Josh Dix too. That's one, the more I've watched him, that's obviously he kind of had the reputation as a shooter.
Last night or Monday night, really good chance to watch some high-level guys play.
Yeah, the Miller North against AL, Jason Green against Josh Dix, and they were matching up with each other. But I was saying that the thing with Josh that I've really come to realize is how good of a finisher he is with either hand.
It's body control.
Yeah, and body control,
he
touch,
has fantastic body
coordination. Like he's so good, like jumping, like taking off from halfway up the lane, up and under, extend, finish with the left hand. Like that is a tough finish, and he makes it look easy. So that's again, the more well-rounded you are, the tougher it is. And Josh, talk about well-rounded. I think Josh Dix is a great example of that, as we'll see in kind of the Omaha metro area.
Do you have a comp for maybe not a comp for him, but a comp from a recruiting standpoint on where you think he is right now to where you think he could end up? There are a lot of people that will tell you, if you watch, it doesn't matter what gym he's in, if you watch him enough and you say, oh my gosh, if he would just shoot it more, he could be, and then they throw out some pretty lofty, really good basketball players. Do you have a comp for where you think his evolution on the recruiting cycle could be? I wouldn't call him a late bloomer.
I think he's
maybe in a late tension getter.
That's exactly it, because he didn't come over to OSA until last summer, and then the season kind of got wiped out, right? So he didn't get a play in front of coaches at live period tournaments. So obviously you kind of put the film out there. His people reach out to coaches, and he got some offers anyway. But now I think coming into July, it's going to be a big month for him to potentially really garner some more attention for that OSA team once they do hit the Adidas circuit, because it'll be the first time outside of, obviously, Paul Lusk, Purdue's offered him. Creighton has seen him play in person multiple times, just being around here, and obviously his son playing at OSA and all that. So he got that opportunity during the high school season, whatever. So you get more coaches that get a chance to see him in person and see kind of that. And the thing with Josh is he's not necessarily, like, his highlights are good, but he's not a highlight player. He's just an all-around, make the right play type of player.
Yeah.
And he's a step up in the clutch. I've seen multiple times Monday nights where he's come up and made big shots.
Okay, so I kind of like this, because I always cringe when people just like stats. And maybe it's because of the way I've watched my own son play, right? That I'm drawn towards being a winner and making good basketball plays. It's not always going to be about getting you 20, although you could be capable. I love the fact that he's found this blend, and there's a couple of other guys like him that I think are really, really efficient. And even they probably haven't realized what they're capable of being, because it's contrary to their personality. Doesn't mean that they're not a dog. It just means, like, they've played the game away a certain way, but are very capable. Like, he's got a whole nother dimension to his game, in my opinion.
The thing is, like, Josh, I just don't know what his weakness is at this point. Right. I think he's at least very good in pretty much every area.
He's an 8 across the board, right? He's not going to be a 10 one night and a 2 the next.
And so as a secondary handler, he can run the pick and roll and make the right reads. He'll make the extra pass to a teammate. He'll make plays on defense with his length, block shots, steals. He'll go in there and rebound. Obviously, he can shoot and he can get through him and finish, as we're talking about. So, like, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how he steps up against the Adidas level competition, the best of the best, like how much of that stuff translates at a high level against even better competition. I think that's kind of the next step for him. But in terms of just having the skills and having the overall feel and understanding of the game, he's got such a great foundation right now.
Yeah, I thought Monday was a really good, and I didn't get to Lincoln because you were there on Tuesday, and I hope we may run out of time for Lincoln, but I thought Monday was a really good snapshot into, because we've talked about this the last 2 weeks. Hey, what's the difference between high school and summer, high school summer, AAU. Like, I felt like there were a couple of really, really good examples last night. I'll give you one, for instance. I watched West Side and South, right? South, relatively young. It's pretty open-ended, but it still boils down to making good, right basketball plays. I won't even say fundamental, right? It's wide open. It looks like summer.
Yeah,
the AAU.
There's no scouting reports. There's no game plans.
Yeah, but it was different, and I felt like they only ended up scoring 35 points. They're a better team than that.
Yes,
but it reminded me that at the end of the day, I still think summer on the high school circuit is still always going to be about making the right basketball plays.
Yep. And that's, I mean, your Warriors are running rush shot through everybody they play, no matter who's.
And they're not even healthy. They're missing two starters.
Chandler and Caleb didn't even play, and it still didn't matter. Again, South is a team that won the Bryan Shootout. Has been playing some good basketball, and it just wasn't even really that competitive. So
I was the 16-16 score against Gretna had my attention in the first one for West Side. Now they pulled away,
yes.
But you got a chance, and so I won't say the good end, but all the fuss was down there with Millard North and Bellevue West. What could you discern? I mean, Millard North's got 20 guys on the bench. Bellevue West still working. Bellevue West still working in some new pieces. But the stars were kind of stars.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to this weekend. Bellevue West and West Side are supposed to face off this weekend.
Yeah.
In one of the two terms, I forgot which one. I think the prep team camp or I think that was it. But hopefully both teams will be relatively healthy-ish, have most of their guys there for that.
We're close.
There you go.
We're close.
But, yes, Millard North, so – that was a lot of fun to watch Jason and Isaac go head-to-head, or Jason and Josh go head-to-head, especially because Jason has been on his visit, so I hadn't gotten to see him play with that Millard North team. And I think at this point they're still trying to figure some things out.
We're talking about Millard North and AL.
Yes. And so they've got David Harmon and Nick Dolezal were kind of their backups as juniors last year. Kind of role players came in, did their job, didn't really put up a lot of stats, but they're good basketball players. Those two will start. Jason obviously will start. I think Neil Mosser has established himself as kind of the fourth starter there with the way he's playing. I think they're still kind of looking, all right, who's going to be the point? Who's going to be in that backcourt?
Probably Jackson Page.
I know they really like Isaiah McMorris and Eli Gate, the guys that have been in the program for a year already. So, and Jackson is the other one in that mix. I think it'll probably end up being one of those three. He looked a lot different
in the blue, right? And I listen. I've watched him play as he was younger. I didn't see him play a ton at Central because minutes were hard to come by. But he's kind of a steadying force. Is that for that fifth guy? Because he'll be probably the primary ball handler, unless you run that offense through Jason Green. He may be what they need to kind of to distribute. Like, they would be well served having kind of more of a true point guard.
Yeah, especially if that's kind of the role he buys into. And because Jackson's always kind of been more of a scoring guard. And at his size, it's just tough to be that effective. We've seen kind of that same deal happen with Curtis Ogba Jr., who talented player.
Another fierce competitor.
Yeah. But didn't necessarily always channel it the right way. And I think Jackson's got to kind of figure out, all right, where do I fit in with this team? And that's the tough part about guys transferring over in your senior year. Devin Wilson's kind of the transfer from Brownell Talbot is kind of in the same situation where
he's got some pogo stick to his game.
Trying to figure out where do I fit in with the rest of these guys that have been here and that the coaches already know about and have confidence in. So that's the other big part about June is that's when you can do that, when you can show, all right, this is what I can do for you. And so Millard North's going to be interesting to continue to track kind of the rest of this month to see how those pieces fit together.
And maybe we'll know. So we're going to get some team camps. Some schools will leave. But in Summer League, you've got a couple weeks left. Is there a team out there that – because I wouldn't call you a skeptic, but it takes a lot to get you kind of like, I won't even say on the hype train, more the bandwagon. Is there a team that has piqued your interest where you're like, huh, this is interesting. I'd like to see them a time or two more.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few already. I'm starting to focus a little bit more on Lincoln North Star.
I was going to ask you about Lincoln Southwest.
So the thing about Lincoln Southwest is they've been playing without Ryland Smith and Ben Hunziker. So you're getting younger guys. Lucas Helms and Bon Boom have been kind of man in the backcourt there for them. And once Ben
a lot of folks like Bon Boom.
Yeah, both those guys definitely have some upside. You can see why they like them, and they're still trying to iron out the consistency factor of it. They're both very talented, but you add Ryland and Ben back into that's going to look a little bit different. So now you've got one or two of those guys coming off the bench, or Grant Milak coming. Like they've got a good mix of guys.
Interesting you bring up North Star because I like Coach Q, Coach Katroki. I think they do a good job. He kind of flies under the radar, even when they were making runs with Donovan Williams. It was about Donovan Williams, right? He's at overtime, like he's proven. He keeps making trips to state. He's a pretty good coach.
And the big deal about North Star was Brendan Clemens Jr. played with them yesterday, and he's been out the last few weeks. Suffered a knee injury.
I saw that
late
live.
In the spring. Yeah, so did I, unfortunately. Kid that's missed his entire freshman year with a broken leg. Now missed a few weeks here with that injury after a pretty solid sophomore year. But he was back out there. First game, we got to match up with Isaac Trout. Welcome back, kid. Yeah. But so you have him, Antalas and Linnell, another 6'7", 6'8" kid that is pretty skilled, can knock down the shot.
Yeah, their key will be in the backcourt.
So he's a sophomore. And then they've got sophomores, Jake Hilkman on the wing, and then Kwan Sidney and KG Gatwich. So you got 4 sophomores and a junior. That's basically your 5 right there. And they're all really talented, intriguing. I think they'll be a lot better.
Played against Quan quite a bit, which is the back and forth over the last 5-6 years. The commitment to finding a consistent jump shot could be a game changer for Quan.
And he's knocked down a few shots since I've been watching down in that summer league.
He's got good length.
Yeah.
He's got some explosiveness to his game. He's got good change of direction.
Yeah. And so, I think that's like Miller North, I think North Star is going to be a team that's going to be a lot better in February and March than they are in December, just because they have those young guys out there that they're going to be relying on that'll kind of get thrown into the fire and then see if they can learn from that and get better as the season goes on.
Before we get out of here, I'm sure we'll hear at least the music or the big voice guy here in a sec. Knowing what you know now, too soon to come up with a top 5. We've talked about it. We've thrown some names out there. I'm on record. I said I would put Bell West 1, probably Prep 2, West Side 3. West Side is like, hey, feel free to log on to the Homer Network. We've been killing teams, but I don't love the competition they've seen either. So
I think I'd have West Side at least 2. I think Bellevue West, West Side are those 2. Prep definitely is intriguing, especially with the way Martell Evans has played.
Tell you what.
He was really good at the UNO team.
He's the X factor. I was talking to Coach Lukey about him over text a couple weeks ago, and I had to apologize for forgetting about him.
And they played AL right after Miller North did on Monday, and Luke Jungers wasn't there. And
Josh isn't the type of coach that's trying to go out and win Summer League either, so you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt.
And Sean Ramachandran wasn't there either. He's another senior who wasn't able to play last year. He's a kid I've known for a while. That wasn't able to play last year because of the pandemic, and he missed out on his 16U summer and his 17U summer and his junior year of high school. So that's 3 seasons in a row that he sat out. He looked really good on Saturday. I think he's going to be a piece that really helps them. But neither Jungers nor him were there. Evans was a guy that stepped up. Casey O'Malley was there, but Evans, I think, really asserted himself.
They need his athleticism.
Oh, yeah.
He's the one that's different than the other aforementioned, right? He's a high-end athlete.
Yeah, like Casey's a really good athlete. He'll go punch on you if he's got a lane in the basket. Martell is an even step above that. Yeah. I don't know that you can find somebody more athletic, more explosive in the backcourt in the state right now than Evans is, the way he's able to explode to the rim, use his body control. Hasn't really shown the ability to shoot quite yet, and that'll be interesting once we get into the high school season where teams game plan and scout specific their defense. But just the tools that he has and the way he's playing right now, even in overtime, he made wasn't a bucket. He pick and roll, dump off to I don't know how to say his last name, but Jaden Gbetannou. I haven't actually heard it pronounced, but made a really nice pick and roll read to him for the go ahead bucket. Then they got stopped, and Jaden went and hit 2 free throws to seal it in overtime. So I think Prep, with the pieces they've got coming back, Jungers is looking really good. I've just got the South Dakota State offer. I think more on the way. Obviously, he visited UNO recently. So with him, with Evans, with Casey, and with some of these other guys that are stepping up, Prep's going to be right there in that mix. And then after that, I'm having a tough time kind of figuring out. Like,
4,
I think
5, 6.
There are a lot of teams.
Who would you slot in Lincoln right now?
I think Southwest will have a chance
because they haven't seen their personnel.
If they get healthy. But I think Pius probably is probably just heading into the year. Probably has
leading the way.
With Hostreiter, and Christensen, you got 3 guys that are all 6'6" that can handle the rock, can go inside and score inside. You've got Jared Borer coming in as a shooter to kind of balance out the size and athleticism. They're just going to be a tough matchup for teams. The question is whether
it'll be interesting to see if this is the year that they can get over the hump and win the highly competitive big one.
Yes.
They're always everybody's dark horse.
Yeah. They'll be in the mix. Trayson Anderson is the young guy, just going to be a sophomore, 6'6", that can step out and shoot and finish inside. So they've got they're going to be a tough matchup for teams. It's just a matter of how well are they going to play within. Can they be consistent with the shot, with the decision-making? But physically, they've got the pieces to be right in there as well. So I think those 2 are probably the ones that intrigue me the most. I think, again, North Star I think will be better late than early. Lincoln Northeast will be solid. I think Lincoln's actually going to be pretty competitive this year, kind of the city title there with a lot of those teams. You don't see a lot of teams that are.
And you didn't mention one of the usual suspects in East.
Yeah, and East, I think they've got a lot of guard play. They're still kind of figuring out.
They were very, very small. Westside hammered them a couple of weeks ago, and it's not a typical Coach Campbell team yet, right? Where we'll touch and can guard and play ball screens, but he's a fantastic coach. Yeah, Bam McPhail and Joe Marfisi are the kind of the 2 starters coming back, and they're kind of looking for young guys to step up. I know my guy Carter Templemeyer has a chance to kind of be a starter there and be one of their go-to guys, and he's been playing pretty well recently. So they're still figuring out a lot. They got a lot. They're going to be elevating a lot of their JV guys that were sophomores and juniors last year. They'll have a chance to kind of round that out, but they're going to be competitive for sure. They're going to fight, and they're going to be able to knock off some teams, I think, at different points. As we'll probably get ready to hear the music here. More to gain coming up in this live period. Jay Dawson or Josh Dix? Whew, that's tough. I will say Jay Dawson just because he's starting on a lower level. I think there is more room, but Josh has a chance to really blow up as well. Hey, how about how Jay Dawson is on the lips of just about everyone that's even remotely watching Summer League? He's been really good this month. And you know what? He may buck the trend. He didn't always bark as a pup, but he may bite as a dog. He appears to be assuming the role. That's one of the best in the business. That's Jacob Padilla. I'm Damon Benning. This is another episode of Nebraska Preps Nebraska Postgame. How about that? I can't even remember the name. You were so good. We'll be back next week. The pod will drop. We're going to move to Wednesdays to give us a chance to watch Monday Summer League, Tuesday Summer League. We'll be back next Wednesday with Nebraska Preps Postgame.
Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
A Hurrdat Media Production.